Okay, good morning, Mom. Good morning, friends. Thank you for the time and giving to me. In this opportunity, I want to present my material, and my material is in chapter 7, that is about sampling. The purpose of chapter 7 is to help us to learn about sampling in quantitative and qualitative research. In the other words, we will learn how participants are selected to be part of empirical research studies. Sampling refers to drawing a sample or a subset from a population or the full set. The usual goal in sampling is to produce a representative sample, a sample that is similar to the population on all characteristics, except that it includes fewer people because it is a sample rather than the complete population. And then metaphorically, a perfect representative sample will be a mirror image of the population from which it was selected. Again, that except that it would include fewer people. Jadi, sampel adalah sebagian atau bagian dari populasi. Sementara populasi merupakan wilayah generalisasi atau bagian terbesar dari sampel. Menurut Sugiono, populasi bukan hanya orang, tetapi juga bisa merupakan objek dan benda-benda alam lainnya. Contoh beberapa kampus dan beberapa sekolah. Contoh pengambilan sampel yaitu ketika saya ingin meneliti speaking skill dari teman-teman semua. Misalnya kita andaikan dengan teman-teman semua berjumlah 30 orang. Dan saya memerlukan 20 orang mahasiswa sebagai objek penelitian saya. Dari sini, 20 orang yang saya maksudkan adalah sampel, sementara teman-teman secara keseluruhan yang 30 orang adalah populasi. And then, terminology used in sampling. Here are some important terms used in sampling. The first, a sample is a set of elements taken from a larger population. Then the sample is a subset of the population, which is the full set of elements or people or whatever you are sampling. Sampling error refers to the difference between the value of a sample statistic, such as the sample mean, and the true value of the population parameter, such as population mean. Note that some error is always present in sampling. With random sampling methods, the error is random rather than systematic. And then the response rate is the percentage of people in the sample selected for the study who actually participate in the study. And then a sampling frame is just a list of all the people that are in the population. Here is an example of a sampling frame. A list of all the names in my population, and they are numbered. Note that the following sampling frame also has information on age and gender included in case you want to draw some samples and do calculations. Oke, jadi sederhananya di sini semakin besar jumlah sampel atau mendekati jumlah populasi, maka peluang kesalahan generalisasi semakin kecil. Sebaliknya, semakin jumlah sampel atau semakin menjauhi populasi, maka akan semakin besar peluang kesalahan generalisasi. Contoh, ketika saya ingin meneliti speaking skill dari 30 mahasiswa, apabila saya hanya mengambil 5 orang sebagai sampel, maka peluang kesalahan generalisasinya sangat besar. Berbeda jika dari 30 mahasiswa tersebut, saya mengambil sebagiannya atau saya mengambil 20 orang dari 30 orang tersebut untuk dijadikan sampel, maka peluang kesalahan generalisasi semakin kecil. And then, technique sampling. The two major types of sampling in quantitative research are random sampling and non-random sampling. The first is about random sampling techniques. The former produce representative samples, the latter does not produce representative sample. Random sampling techniques divided into four types. They are the first, simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is the most basic type of random sampling. It is an equal probability sampling method which is abbreviated by IPSAM. Remember that IPSAM means everyone in the sampling frame has an equal chance of being in the final sample. And then you should understand that using an IPSAM is important because that is what produces representative samples. Samples that represent the population from which they were selected. We will see below that simple random samples are not the only equal probability sampling method or IPSAM. It is the most basic and well-known, however. Sampling experts recommend random sampling without replacement rather than random sampling with replacement because the former is a little more efficient in producing representative samples. It requires slightly fewer people and is therefore a little cheaper. Jadi pada simple random sampling, populasi yang ada pada penelitian harus bersifat homogen atau relatif homogen, di mana semuanya memiliki karakteristik sama atau hampir sama. Contohnya, penelitian tentang kemampuan siswa dalam menulis karangan narasi. Populasinya adalah semua siswa kelas 10. Dan ternyata di kelas tersebut pernah diajarkan tentang cara menulis paragraf atau karangan narasi. Maka dari itu, populasinya merupakan populasi homogen dalam artian semua siswa kelas 10 mampu dan sudah mempelajari tentang karangan narasi. Tekniknya tinggal kita pilih secara acak. Seperti anggaplah dalam satu angkatan ada 6 kelas. Contohnya maksudnya dari kelas 10 tadi bisa kita contohnya ada kelas 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D dan 10E dan 10F. Dan peneliti mengambil 4 kelas terserah mau diambil yang mana, dan inilah yang disebut dengan random atau acak. Dan sampel yang diambil dianggap representatif atau mewakili karena populasinya homogen. And then about systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is the second type of random sampling. It is an equal probability sampling method or IPSAM. Remember, simple random sampling was also an IPSAM. Systematic sampling involves 3 steps. The first, determine the sampling interval, which is symbolized by K. It is the population size divided by the desired sample size. And the second, randomly select a number between 1 and K and include that person in your sample. And the third, also include each element in your sample. For example, if K is 10 and your randomly selected number between 1 and 10 was 5, then you will select person 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, and etc. When you get to the end of your sampling frame, you will have all the people to be included in your sample. One potential but rarely occurring problem is called periodicity. There is a cycle pattern in the sampling frame. It could occur when you attach several ordered lists to one another. If you had took lists from multiple teachers who had all ordered their lists on some variables such as IQ, on the other hand, stratification within one overall list is not a problem at all. If you have one list and have it ordered by gender or by IQ, basically, if you are attacking multiple lists to one another, there could be a problem. It would be better to recognize the lists into one overall list. For example, jadi dapat kita lihat pada contoh ini, di mana dari tabel tersebut, tabel bagian atas adalah populasi dan bagian bawah adalah sampel. Anggaplah tabel bagian atas adalah nomor presensi, ada 24 populasi. Jika menggunakan teknik sistematis, maka dari populasi tersebut dapat kita ambil sampelnya, bisa diambil dari kelipatan 1, kelipatan 2, atau kelipatan 3. Artinya, kita mengambil secara sistematis. Dan di sini yang kita ambil adalah kelipatan 2, maka yang tidak berkesempatan menjadi sampel adalah nomor urut yang ganjil. And then stratified random sampling. The third type of random sampling is called stratified random sampling. First, stratify your sampling frame. Divide it into the males and the females if you are using gender as your stratification variable. Second, take a random sample from each group. Take a random sample of males and a random sample of females. Put these two sets of people together and you now have your final sample. There are actually two different types of stratified sampling. The first type of stratified sampling and most common is called proportional stratified sampling. In proportional stratified sampling, we must make sure that subsamples or the sample of males and females are proportional to their size in the population. Note that proportional stratified sampling is an equal probability sampling method. It is IPSAM, which is good. The second type of stratified sampling is called disproportional stratified sampling. In disproportional stratified sampling, the subsamples are not proportional to their size in the population. And then here is an example showing the difference between proportional and disproportional stratified sampling. Assume that your population is 75 female and 25 male. Then assume also that you want a sample of size 100 and you want to stratify on the variable called gender. For proportional stratified sampling, you would randomly select 75 females and 25 males from the population. And for disproportional stratified sampling, you might randomly select 50 females and 50 males from the population. Oke, jadi sederhananya, misalkan di dalam kelas terdiri dari 60 siswa dengan perincian 30 orang laki-laki dan 30 orang perempuan. Dari ke-60 ini, saya mengambil secara acak 15 orang dari laki-laki dan 15 orang dari perempuan. Kemudian saya satukan sampel acak tersebut menjadi sampel akhir. And then about cluster random sampling. In this type of sampling, we will randomly select cluster rather than individual type units in the first stage of sampling. A cluster has more than one unit in it. For example, a school, a classroom, a theme. We discussed two types of cluster sampling in the chapter 1 stage and 2 stage. The first type of cluster sampling is called one-stage cluster sampling. One-stage cluster sampling, to select a one-stage cluster sample, we first select a random sample of clusters. Then we include in our final sample all of the individual units that are in the selected clusters. The second type of cluster sampling is called two-stage cluster sampling. In the first stage, we take a random sample of clusters. In the second stage, we take a random sample of elements from each of the clusters we selected in stage 1. And then the important points about cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is an equal probability sampling method, or IPSAM, only if the clusters are approximately the same size. Remember that IPSAM is very important because that is what produces representative samples. And then when clusters are not the same size, we must fix the problem by using the technique called probability proportional to size for selecting our clusters in stage 1. This will make our cluster sampling an equal probability sampling method, or IPSAM, and it will therefore produce representative samples. Contoh cluster sampling, dalam sebuah populasi daerah Manggarai Timur, kita ketahui bahwa Manggarai Timur memiliki banyak kecamatan, di antaranya Kecamatan Elar, Elar Selatan, Kota Komba, dan banyak kecamatan lainnya. Dari banyaknya kecamatan ini diambil secara acak atau yang diambil tidak semua kecamatan yang ada di Manggarai Timur untuk dijadikan klaster. Dan yang dipilih di sini harus yang benar-benar mewakili populasi. Setelah itu diambil secara proportionate stratified random sampling, di mana tiap klasternya diambil lagi secara random untuk dijadikan sampel. And then about non-random sampling techniques. The other major type of sampling used in quantitative research is non-random sampling. There are four main types of non-random sampling. The first, convenience sampling. Convenience sampling, it simply involves using the people who are the most available or the most easily selected to be in our research study. Jadi dalam convenience merupakan cara memilih siapa saja yang secara kebetulan dijumpai oleh peneliti atau prosedur sampling yang memilih sampel dari orang atau unit yang paling mudah dijumpai atau diakses. Contoh, ketika saya ingin meneliti tentang tanggapan konsumen terhadap produk yang berada di Nirwana, maka sampelnya adalah setiap pengunjung yang berbelanja di Nirwana pada waktu tertentu. And then, quota sampling. It involves setting quotas and then using convenience sampling to obtain those quotas. A set of quotas might be given to you as follows. Find 25 African American males, 25 European American males, and 25 African American females, and then 25 European American females. You use convenience sampling to actually find the people, but you must make sure you have the right number of people for each quota. And then purposive sampling. The researcher specifies the characteristics of the population of interest and then locates individuals who match those characteristics. For example, you might decide that you want to only include boys who are in the 7th grade and have been diagnosed with ADHD in your research study. You would then try to find 50 students who meet your inclusion criteria and include them in your research study. Jadi purposive sample sederhananya peneliti menetapkan tujuan dari penelitian yang hendak dilakukan. Contoh lainnya adalah penelitian terkait KDRT yang menimpa wanita. Penelitian ini nantinya bisa menjadi dasar untuk penanganan masalah kekerasan terutama yang menimpa wanita. And then snowball sampling. Each research participant is asked to identify other potential research participants who have a certain characteristic. You start with one or a few participants, ask them for more, find those, and ask them for some, and continue until you have a sufficient sample size. This technique might be used for a hard-to-find population. For example, you might want to use snowball sampling if you want to do a study of people in your city who have a lot of power in the area of educational policy making. In addition to the already known positions of power, such as the school board and the school system superintendent. And then about random selection and random assignment. In random selection or using an equal probability selection method, you select a sample from a population using one of the random sampling techniques discussed earlier. The resulting random sample will be like mirror image of the population except for change the difference. For example, if you randomly select or using simple random sampling, 1,000 people from the adult population in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the sample will look like the adult population of Ann Arbor. In random assignment, you start with a set of people, or you already have a sample which very well may be a convenient sample, and then you randomly divide that set of people into two or more groups, and then you are taking a set of people and assigning them two or more groups. And the next, the groups or subsets will be mirror image of each other or except for change differences. For example, if you start with a convenient sample of 100 people and randomly assign them to two groups of 50 people, the two groups will be equivalent on all known and unknown variables. Random assignment generates similar groups, and it is used in the strongest of the experimental research designs to see exactly how to random assignment. And then you can also use this randomized program for random assignment. And then about determining the sample size when random sampling is used. Would you like to know the answer to the question how big should my sample be? I will start with my first simple answer to your question. First, try to get as big of a sample as you can for your study. For example, because the bigger the sample, the better. And then, if your population is size 100 or less, then include the whole population rather than taking a sample. And then look at other studies in the research literature and see how many they are selecting. And next, there are many sample size calculators on the web, but they generally require you to learn a little bit of statistics first. I will list more when we get to the chapter on statistics. I want to make a few more points about sample size in this chapter. In particular, note that you will need larger samples under these circumstances. When the population is very heterogeneous, and then when you want to break down the data in multiple categories, and then when you want a relatively narrow confidence interval. For example, note that the estimate that 75% of teachers support a policy plus or minus 4% is more narrow than the estimate of 75 plus or minus 5%. And then when you expect a weak relationship or a small effect. And the next, when you use a less efficient technique of random sampling. And the last, when you expect to have a low response rate. The response rate is the percentage of people in your sample who agree to be in your study. And next, about sampling in qualitative research. Sampling in qualitative research is usually purposive, or see the above discussion of purposive sampling. The primary goal in qualitative research is to select information-rich cases. There are several specific purposive sampling techniques that are used in qualitative research. The first, maximum variation sampling, and then homogeneous sample selection, extreme case sampling, typical case sampling, critical case sampling, negative case sampling. For example, purposely select cases that disconfirm your generalizations so that you can make sure that you are not just selectively finding cases to support your personal theory. And then opportunistic sampling, for example, you select useful cases as the opportunity arises. And the last is mixed purposeful sampling. For example, you can mix the sampling strategies we have discussed into more complex designs tailored to your specific needs. Okay, mom and friends, that's all about my presentation, and thank you for your attention.